Hello everyone and welcome back to an FM experiment where we see what would happen if you gave a club the perfect first 11 and the perfect second 11 made up of Wonderkids. So up to this point we've gone 6 years into the future, and as you can see in the bottom right of this screen, Pep Guardiola, the man who's been managing Leicester to consecutive titles and a Champions League victory at this point, is now in an insecure job. That's because last season they only finished third after 4 titles in a row and left the Champions League at the quarter-final stage, which is just not good enough for a club with the players that they've got. If we have a look at their history of competitions, you'll see that Champions League win came in 2019. He's also won a FIFA Club World Cup, 4 Premier League titles in a row. He's responsible for 3 of those, UEFA Super Cup in there as well, and an FA Cup to boot when they did the treble. They actually managed to win 6 trophies that season. They did the treble and then also won the Community Shield, Club World Cup and UEFA Super Cup. So they matched Barcelona's record of 6 trophies in one calendar year. But the next year his job is suddenly under threat because they failed to win any trophies. So what we're going to do this episode is we're going to move forward 4 years. We're going to double the amount of time that we go forward, because a lot of the players are starting to leave the club, and 4 years from now most of the first team 11 we brought in, including the likes of Lionel Messi, may well have retired. So I think this will probably be the last part of this experiment, but do let me know if you are interested in seeing how the Wonder Kids get on a few more years into the future, or if Leicester can continue their success, and I'd be happy to do that. And if you don't mind, please click the subscribe button down here if you haven't already. But let's jump forward 4 years in future and see how we're getting on. Well, we are now 4 years in the future. It's not quite a full 4 years in the future, but Zinedine Zidane is now the manager of Leicester. Pep Guardiola has been sacked. Matt Hummels is again the captain. Lionel Messi now the vice-captain. They switched that around now a couple of times, but they're both still at the club all this time later. It's now 2025, which I find quite surprising, but Paul Pogba's now their key player, so they've clearly brought him in. I think what we'll do first is take a look at their transfer history. This is the most important screen. Now, when we left off, it was the end of the 2019-2020 season. They didn't do much business that year, and the year after that they have sold some more players. Kaputska leaving for 2.4 million, Ben Chilwell for 2.2. Raheem Sterling went on loan to West Brom. He was just not featuring for them whatsoever. Kevin Wimmer going to Roma for £14 million. Jose Jimenez, one of their wonder kids, going to Barcelona for £30 million. And Stuaro, another player that they signed, also leaving for Bayern. Imbula, one of their Champions League winning player, has left on a loan to Spurs. So a few big names starting to leave the club. They did bring in Fred from Real Madrid and Rafael Varane as well. He's a good youth prospect, as well as Danilo Pereira, all in a raid on La Liga. The year after that, Gianelli Imbula made his move to Spurs permanent for £9.5 million. Few players leaving on a free. Leroy Sané left on loan. He was a substitute only throughout this entire series. But Manuel Neuer went to Southampton for just £1.3 million, clearly dropping out of the pecking order. Marcus Rashford, though, going to Liverpool for £40.5 million. Now, that is a little bit of a surprise. He was never really playing. He did it for a little bit here, but I think those were mostly substitute appearances. He's had a lot more game time for Liverpool, and has since moved back to Leicester for £35.5 million, which is quite funny. And Jerome Boateng going to Arsenal for 3.1. A lot of these players hitting that age where they're just not in the team anymore, but they don't seem to be strengthening the squad at all. Just £10 million on Virginia from Southampton. And then if we go forward another year, we'll see a few players leaving on a free, including Arturo Vidal. He left on a free. Fred left the club for Real Madrid again. He just left for £21 million. If we take a quick look at his history and see that price difference, he moved to Leicester, 22.5, left just 18 months later, I think, for £17.5 million. So that was a bit of a wasted adventure, I'd say. But no other major players leaving that year. Kondogbia coming in for up to £26 million. Then last season, again, no major departures. Raheem Sterling to Burnley for up to £14.25 million. He just was not the player they expected when he started in this series. Alberto Moreno also leaving for £5.75 million. A strange signing to me, that one, because they let Baba Rahman go and brought him in instead. But they did sign Balde Keita, who's quite a good player, Coldio in, and Nico Elvedi is their major signing of that summer. He's a centre-back wonderkid from, where's he from? Is he from Basel? No, Dortmund, Atletico Madrid, Gladbach. Bit of a journeyman, really. And then this season, they have sold João Virginia to West Ham for nearly £30.5 million. Gareth Bale's left on a free transfer, one of the major players who has actually left the club at this point. No other major ones in there. Balde Keita leaving for £12.5 million, but they are spending money again. They brought in Marcus Rashford again for up to £48.5 million. Antonio Almeida coming in from Juve for 29, and Lewis Megginson coming in from Southampton, a Scottish striker who looks pretty decent, to be honest. 18 goals in 38 or 36 international games is not a bad return. So they're doing reasonably well. Let's have a quick look at their senior squad schedule over the last few years. If we drop all the way back to the 2021 season, which is where we left off last time. So at this point, they hadn't managed to keep any trophies from the year before, but they were still in the Champions League. They got through. They actually had a really good start to the season, just one defeat to Everton, but otherwise carrying on, beating Juventus 2-0 in the group stage, Bale and Neymar combining with the goals. Through in the EFL Cup fourth round, a tight game against Liverpool there, and through the quarter-final against Burnley 4-2, another red card against their team. But look at this unbeaten run. That's an incredible unbeaten run. And then finally lose to Arsenal 3-1. Alexis Sanchez and Mesut Ozil still at the club in 2020. And then they are knocked out of the FA Cup by Bury. That is embarrassing to the nth degree, but they managed to get through against Man United. Home and away wins in the EFL Cup semi-final, continuing their league form, getting through the Champions League knockout round against Napoli 6-1 on aggregate, and then losing 3-2 to PSG before turning it around with a 2-0 win. Kimmich and Martins with the goal for them there. Then they beat United 1-0 in the first leg of the Champions League semi-final and 3-1 in the return leg, and in the final they won the Champions League against Manchester City. Romelu Lukaku, the player to win it for them. A very good Champions League season, bringing their second European Cup back to the club. The year after that, they managed to win the UEFA Super Cup for a second time. They won the Community Shield yet again. Also just carrying on through the EFL Cup and the Champions League group, managing to get through to the semi-final of the EFL Cup and win the FIFA Club World Cup 2-1 against Sao Paulo, a 91st minute winner from Gelson Martins. What a dramatic finish to that final. And then lost 3-0 to Watford in the first leg of the semi-final of the EFL Cup, getting knocked out, not able to turn that around in the second leg. But through to the Champions League knockout stages, beating Inter Milan home and away before getting taken out by Real Madrid at the quarter-final stage. So not the best season for them there. I think they did win the Premier League that season, but it just wasn't the best. The year after that, again, getting through the competitions quite comfortably into the EFL Cup semi-finals yet again, where they were knocked out by Spurs 5-0 on aggregate, but through in the FA Cup and in the Champions League, they managed to get past PSV 8-1 on aggregate into the FA Cup semi-finals as well. Beat Real Madrid 1-0 in the Champions League quarter-final first leg, a bit of revenge there, and managed to get through with a 0-0 draw at the Bernabeu. So they're into the semi-finals of the Champions League, but out of the semi-finals of the FA Cup to Man City, losing to PSG in the first leg and then winning 2-1 at home, but go out on away goals to PSG, so they aren't going to win a third European Cup in that season. The final full season we have, they had to go through the Champions League best place playoff position, but they did manage to do that. And look at this start to the season, absolutely incredible, winning all of their games, their first sort of 10-15 games there, and still unbeaten at this point before losing to Liverpool in the EFL Cup quarter-final. A little bit of a shame, that one. But still getting quite a lot of wins under their belt. continuing to go through the cups, and in the Champions League quarterfinals, they go through a 3-2 win on aggregate into the FA Cup semi-finals as well. They beat Chelsea in the first leg of the Champions League and managed to make it into the semi-finals yet again, and then lose to Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-final. 4 games against Chelsea in 6 matches, quite intense there, but they get through against Barcelona 5-1 on aggregate in the semi-final of the Champions League, and they win their 3rd European Cup, beating Manchester City 2-1. Again, they've beaten Manchester City. They've only ever beaten English teams in the final of the European Cup, which is quite funny, really. But that is now 3 European Cups in their pocket. So if you take a look, you can see there are the 3 Champions League titles that they've managed to win. They've also won 6 Premier League titles as well, but only the 1 FA Cup still to their name. That year they did 6 trophies in 1 calendar year, matching that Barcelona record. But that's pretty impressive. 6 Premier League titles, 3 Champions League titles. Not a bad return for what is less than a decade in the game, all off the strength of that team that we gave them. No other major honours to talk about. If we take a look at their manager history, though, that could be quite interesting, because they had Pep Guardiola for a time. He had 6 years at the club, 4 league titles and 13 cup wins before Zinedine Zidane came in, and after 2 years he's also won 4 cups and a league title. So he's doing just as well as Pep did, going from a Barcelona manager to a Real Madrid manager. Now, if we have a look at the senior squad and the players that they've got now, we'll sort them by the highest average rating. You'll see Matt Hummels still up there, right at the top. Mauricio Lemos is up there. He was a player they signed quite a while ago. He came in for £26 million and he's been pretty much ever present with a very good average rating as well, doing very well at the club. Neymar is still there. How old's he now? He's 32 years old, but he's still got incredible physical stats on £500,000 a week as well. Gelson Martins, a player that they signed from Sporting, £32.5 million. He's done reasonably well, not played as much this season so far. Paul Pogba they managed to bring in. He's a top quality player, 31 years old now, but he's been at the club since the beginning. Very good stats the whole way through. He's been one of their main players through this series, winning 3 European Cups and 6 league titles. Kimmich, one of the youngsters who came in, he's been pretty much ever present for them as well. A brilliant signing if you get the chance to sign him from Bayern. Rafael Varane they brought in themselves. He came in quite late, 5 seasons ago, but still a very good player in defence. Lionel Messi now retiring this season, but you can see the contribution he's had on the club. He's now 37 years old, barely playing at the moment, dropped off last season, but his average rating is still right up there with the best. A very, very great player, easily the best player in the club. Other players, David Alaba's been in there since the start, so has Hector Bellerin. Dele Alli's in there still, he's now 28 years old, probably the core of the team really at this point. Leroy Sané starting to finally get some game time at the club, which is nice to see. He was there the entire time, just on loan at Inter Milan for 1 season, and after going on loan he came back and broke into the first team, so he did reasonably well. Marcus Rashford, the player who was in and out, and as you can see, he's had a decent season, 5 goals in 14 games so far since coming back in, but he's never really set the world alight. And that is really it for the players that we brought in. So the team is a bit of a shell of where it was, but I'm sure that the club overall is very happy. They've been dipping a little bit, which is why Pep got the sack, finishing 3rd and 4th, but they managed to win the league title last time around with Zinedine Zidane, moving back to the top of the football pyramid. So I think that's probably it for this experiment. I'm not really sure how else or how much further we can really go forward, because the team's core is gone now. Even the Wonderkids we've brought in have started to leave the club as well. There's a few like Kimmich and Dele Alli who are still the core of the team, but the majority of them have moved on. But if you are interested in another part to this episode, do let me know. We could always see how the club gets on after all of these brilliant players have left, but I think realistically what will happen is they've established themselves as a top 4 team. They'll be up there with City and United as a 3-time European champion, and the game will kind of continue as the game does. So If you've enjoyed this experiment, drop a like on the video. Make sure to click the subscribe button down here if you would like to see more Football Manager experiments. I put 3 Football Manager experiment videos a week up. But until next time, see ya.